just a byproduct of modern horror. Because Brandon, you mentioned the resurgence in horror. The way they market and execute horror films now is different. The genre has changed. Any genre does, but it's very much, I think, just a natural reflection. Like before this, of course, there were a ton of horror movie trailers when I saw it, and that there was the one for The Curse of La Llorona, and
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that one.
and it's the same sort of trailer where it's okay, I kind of got the whole gist here of everything that's going to happen. Okay, that's cool.
Although while I was watching that trailer, I'm like, is this an Exorcist remake? So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I we could talk about that trailer at some other time. If there's a La Llorona franchise, we'll come back to that.
We'll come to that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we seem to be pretty disappointed with the way that the trailer went, and I know that I was, because like you just said, Zach, I don't mind movies that are remakes that decide to take it in a new direction. I like that. I think that's fun, because there are people who go to see these movies and then, people complain. They're like, the original's better. And this is why we're doing this podcast, is because we love remakes. I think that's a mistake, a misstep that the company did by releasing that, because they were filming this movie and the plot of the movie was set up heavily to make you think Gage was going to die. And while the ultimate story that they told could not have been done with Gage, because like you said, Zach, they were having these conversations about death. And that scene when Ellie's like, I'm dead, aren't I? Like, that was amazing. And I thought that was really cool and a really interesting way to change the story up. And like you said, playing with the audience's expectation who have seen the original of Judd flipping over the bed. But again, but I knew what was coming because they showed that attack in the trailer.
They showed it on the stairs in the trailer. They
right?
did it
So
twice.
They played with your expectations, but then they prepared you for it and ruined it in the trailer. And I'm really disappointed by that, because the movie was really well done. And there are some things that I don't like about it that we'll talk about it, but I don't have a problem with a remake doing changes like this in general.
Well, I think that I would like to ask you guys, and I don't know if this is jumping ahead, spiraling a different area. I know, John, you had something to say, but what do you think about the change period? Because I think it's interesting that they go into different story directions with it. Like you said, that scene where he's talking to her and she's like, "You want to stay with me?" And he's like, "Yeah." And you can tell he's like really regretting his decision, and it's a real unsettling scene when he has to stay with her in a room after she's come back from the dead. But did they just not want to kill like a 2-year-old boy here in a 2019 movie? Because I mean, that's something I give the book and the original movie a lot of credit for, because that takes guts to do that, and I don't know if that was a factor in their decision making. And then once they decided to make the change based off that opened up some new story possibilities for him. Because, Ellie in the original movie, she just disappears. She goes off with the parents, and she doesn't play a factor in the rest of the movie. And this way, it does bring all the characters back together. So I don't know if that was a side effect of them coming up with a new angle to the story, or if they just kind of shied away from, again, killing a 2-year-old boy with a truck in the middle of a road, because that is a hardcore thing.
Well, I'll let John jump in. The only thing that I have to say on that is, to me, there's no difference between killing a 2-year-old boy and killing an 8-year-old girl. So, I don't know. John?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Zach, to your point, I don't necessarily disagree with you. Like, I agree with both of you, right? Having a kid die on screen is a traumatic thing. Especially, like post-parenthood, that drag out that one that everybody knows. But like the weight of of either child dying is equally impactful. But I do think that audiences are more sensitive to certain things now. So I would completely be willing to concede that this would be a reflection of modern sensibilities about storytelling, as opposed to anything. Because the thing is, the girl has also a higher level of just sort of like baseline intelligence and communication skills. so that when she does come back, I suppose that on subconscious level, audiences might buy into it more easily. They might be willing to go along with that because she already has the ability to speak very intelligently to her parents. And so when she comes back for that philosophical discussion with her dad after she's been resurrected or anything like that, it's easier, I think, for some audience members to buy that this kid is having, these sort of realizations and this sort of intellectual angle to it.
Which they couldn't have done with Gage because he was too young.
Right, exactly.
Well, they've radically changed the story, right?
Yes.
Because let's think about this. Like the setup, right, of even Church dying, everybody's there. It's on Halloween, but in the original movie, it's on Thanksgiving when the family's away. And then so that's there, and then he instead of you think again a misdirect. I'm like, oh, they're gonna kill Church this early in the movie. He has the lethal injection thing like he does in the first film. But he doesn't do it, and he just lets him go on the road. And because he comes back, because they always come back, that's your old cat now. He's coming back on the road, and that's why Ellie goes out on the road. And so it's very well constructed. Okay,
yes.
like I don't think it was a slapdash. Oh, let's change it up. Like they did it with intention. So I was just trying to figure out maybe what inspired that intention. But as we're all saying here, it's a different twist. It opens up new story possibilities, and that way it's not just a beat for beat remake. And as much as we like the first film, that's not what we came to see. If we're gonna go see it again, just like the directors were saying, I want to see Stephen King's Pet Semetary, but I want to see a fresh coat of paint on it, and that's what they did. And I give them credit for incorporating that into the overall story, not just like it would have been really easy to just kind of switch one thing out and everything else plays out the same, but they didn't, and I give them credit for that.
Right, because, so the one part that I had a really big problem with this movie because of the change, so I'll jump to it, is the final battle between the father and the daughter in the Pet Semetary, where he's, like, choking the life out of this kid. Okay, now, I had a conversation with the friend that I went to see at the theater, and, like, I was kind of quiet when the movie was done, and I'm like, okay, I liked it. I didn't hate this movie. I liked it. But that ending in that battle sequence, like, really left me unsettled because, to me, the pain of the original movie is not there anymore. Because when he chooses to kill Gage in the first movie, he puts him down like a pet. Right? Which is a hard thing to do in and of itself, but it takes a decision, and he had to make that decision to kill Gage, and he had to walk up to his kid, and he had to inject his kid and put his kid to sleep again. Where he's fighting for his life because this girl is now trying to kill him. It takes that pain away. But then also, we've got this excruciatingly uncomfortable sequence of him murdering his child in a completely different way.
Yeah, well, I agree with you because the whole thing with Gage in the original, to your point about having to face this emotional trial of, the injection and making that decision, it's still you can still very much see it as an act of mercy. Because if Gage were able to make a choice as to whether he wanted to come back as a murderous demon, most likely Gage would say, I'm not cool with this. And so it's an act of mercy. It comes across as an act of mercy. Whereas to your point about the fight in the pet, I completely agree because you do remove the emotional element because, one, you've stripped any sense of the last vestiges of emotional attachment between father and daughter at that point. And it becomes just a fight scene.
Yeah.
And it's you couldn't sit there and see, because the moment where she suddenly looks sweet again and says, Daddy, please. No, you were just kicking my ass. No.
Did anyone else think of Where No Man Has Gone Before when Kirk is fighting Mitchell?
Yes,
that's what I thought of.
Yes. So basically, it's a remake of Where No Man's Gone Before. Okay.
Yes.
That works.
That's good. Yeah. That's a good call, Brandon. Because again, they've changed the story here. Because them setting up things that you expect from the first film, they don't happen. Like the wife says, "Don't bury me there," right when she's about to die, and then the dad gets knocked out, and then you don't know what happened to the mom, but when dad wakes up, daughter says, "Oh, she's already in the cemetery," and that spirals off into our new ending as well.
Right.
I want to say too that what I found with that was intentional or not, there was an echo of Pet Semetary 2 to that, because that's what Clancy Brown's mission became, to basically start creating his army of the undead by killing people and dragging them up there to bury them. And so I wasn't nuts about that, because I didn't want to be reminded of Pet Semetary 2. So,
Didn't you guys give that like a 3 or a 4? Oh no, that was me.
That was you. That was you, Brandon. Yes.
Yeah, and again, I like that change. So like they're changing the story. That was different. I liked the ending. I liked the twist of, you think he's going to decapitate the kid, and then his wife stabs him from behind. I'm like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. That's kind of cool, right? And then they bury him, and then he comes back, and then they come back to get Gage. And I kind of liked the ending, where the only thing, it cuts to black, and you just hear the alarm on the car. I kind of like that, right? What'd you guys think of that? Zach, we'll start with you on that one.
Well, it was unsettling. I mean, if they went through different endings, that's the one they picked because it had the biggest impact, and I think it does because Gage, he's just as in the first one. That's why it was effective when he died. He was just this innocent little boy, and he's waiting, and you see like the zombie apocalypse coming toward him, and then Church jumps on the car like to accentuate the moment, and you're like, oh no, this poor little kid is going to get. They're going to kill him and turn into a zombie. Who knows what happens next? It's a different kind of ending though, because the first one is kind of ambiguous, because you're like, okay, she kills the guy, but what does she do next? I don't know, but it was unsettling, and I don't know if I like it better or worse than the first one, because the first one was a journey of a man continuing to make poor decisions, and then like it culminates in like he is, my wife just died, it might work better this time. And you're like, well, if I were him, I'd probably be in the same boat, because at this point, why not? I would have lost all sense of reality. But this really changes the focus. It is not his downward spiral of bad decision making that the first one is. So I guess that's my take on it.
I think that the ending starts to go a little bit wrong when he doesn't even make an attempt to drive away with Gage, and he just puts him in the car. I would have been better with them making a decision to have him get in the car and try to go away, but then you find out that Ellie slashed the tire or something something silly like that, where there's a reason he cannot leave with the kid, because at a baseline, any parent in any situation would be, okay, my job now is to protect this one and make sure that as many of us can survive as possible, and turn it, maybe even into a foot chase at the end or something like that. And we do know what happens afterward, because in the beginning opening shot, they show that car door open with blood going from the car into the doorway, and then it goes to white. So we do know. That's
why we started. I was wondering. I'm like, why do they start in media res like that? Like, why do they show us? Because when they first start the movie, we can talk about this for a second, then we jump back. And we're jumping all around. But you start with this kind of helicopter shot of the town, and you see this house on fire, and I'm thinking like, oh, maybe this is the flashback scene where they burn the guy's house because it take place in the past or whatever. And that's not what it was, because then we go into the Creed house and we see the station wagon and the door open. And
I completely forgot about that.
I didn't wrap back around to think about that, John, because that's why that's there, because it kind of shows you what happened after. I was thinking, okay, why are they setting up the end? And I wasn't even in that place mentally. By the way, side note, as I mentioned in our podcast, that was my favorite scene, most unsettling scene in the first version. That's not even here at all. The flashback scene about the veteran, kid who got resurrected by his dad. Now it's in Creed's internet search, and he's like, when it says Vietnam veteran missing from graveyard. So it's like kind of an Easter egg, if you will. But that was missing, and I was disappointed in that, because I thought that that's a really unsettling concept, and they could have done something a lot more with it in this remake, and they didn't do anything.
I completely forgot about that, John. So you saying that there was the car door was open. I remember the blood, but I don't remember the car door. Yeah,
the car door was open. Maybe you guys can help me out. I don't know why they went and burned Judd's house.
To get, well, in this version, yeah, I don't really know. In the previous one, I think it was just to get rid of the body, right? And like burn what was going